What up YouTube, and welcome back to a new video with Rams fan YT. In today's video, I'll be going over my predictions for game week 3 of the sort of tiers 1 to 6 season. We've got the EFL Cup second round to predict. We've got a few local derbies, I believe, as well. It's beginning to formulate the beginning of the season. Still wild predictions though are ever current. Of course, leave your comments down below who you think's going to win in various games uh, and your team. This is all pre-recorded as well, so this will be um, a bit before time, but this one's the closest of a pre-recorded video, so I'm actually still able to base it on previous results which bear relevance. So we're going to start with West Ham United versus Chelsea. Um, I mean, West Ham had a very poor opening day of the season up against Sunderland, and they're up against Chelsea, so it doesn't get much easier for them in that regard. And I am going to have to say, Chelsea to split open that West Ham defence again, 3-0 to Chelsea. My beloved Derby County are hosting Bristol City. We were absolutely battered the other day up against Coventry, as you could see from my shorts. I was in attendance, and it wasn't pretty at times. And I think after such a bad performance, you do tend to get a reaction. This is the only logical thing, but it's been seen as something which happens quite a lot. Some team loses really badly, and then they end up having a hit back reaction. And because of how bad Derby's been to start the season, we're going to go with a bounce back of a 3-0 win for Derby at home. Well, come on, you Rams. Hopefully that figures out to be accurate. So, on to the Saturday games. Got Manchester City versus Tottenham Hotspurs. Um, this is, well, two teams that started on a very good start to the season, to be honest. A 3-0 win for Tottenham and a 4-0 win for Man City. It's all you sort of wanted in life. I mean, yes, some other games they were both fairly easy games, relatively speaking. But yeah, both of them free scoring. I think Tottenham could be dark horses for Europe this season. 4-0 to Tottenham here. I reckon we could see a little interesting um, play throughout the season, seeing how things change under Thomas Frank. Bournemouth versus Wolverhampton Wanderers. Um, Bournemouth, again, one of the teams that did really well last season. They did lose the opening game of the season 4-2 against Liverpool, but it's against Liverpool, so is a bit of a thing we can discount. Same with Wolves' opening game. I think this is a bit more of an even game here. I'm going to go with a 1-1 draw at the Vitality Stadium. Brentford versus Aston Villa. Um, Although Brentford did lose the opening game 3-1 against Forest, that's always going to be a difficult game to go into. Um, so yeah, I think Brentford will be all right this season. A lot of people tip them for relegation. Not me. Go and watch my predictions video to find out where I've actually put them. But they're up against an Aston Villa side who is definitely going to be challenging for Europe this season, in my opinion. We're going to go with a 1-1 draw. It's going to be an interesting one. Burnley versus Sunderland. This has a potential to either be a great game or a really, really dull game. And I am going to have to go with a 0-0 draw. I do think it's going to be a bit of a bore fest, um, in all honesty. Arsenal versus Leeds. Although Leeds did win their opening game, it was a relatively speaking easy one up against Everton. It's a different challenge when you're up against Arsenal, who didn't have an easy start against Man United, although that has become easier maybe as time's gone by for Arsenal. I think Arsenal at home, pretty routine win here. 4-1 to the Gunners. Charlton Athletic versus Leicester City. We are now into the Championship. Um, it's always an interesting one to see. Um, both of these teams, I think Charlton have been actually marginally better at the start of the season, and I think they could come into this one with a shock win. 2-1 to Charlton Athletic. Anyone can beat anyone in the Championship, and you do have home advantage as well for Charlton. So that's my leanings towards that. Hull City versus Blackburn Rovers. Two of these teams that I thought maybe might struggle a bit this season, and so far Blackburn are proving me right. Hull are not. Hull have been a bit of a surprise package for me recently. However, I am going to back Blackburn for a 1-0 win. I think it's only a matter of time for Hull start dropping points. Swansea City versus Watford. Two of these teams who have won one and lost one of the opening two games, and they're both relatively even overall. I think these two teams in quality wise. So I'm going to have to say home advantage 1-0 Swansea. I think they could be dark horses for the playoffs this season. Birmingham City versus Oxford United. Um, Birmingham have been great at the start of the season. Oxford have not. Um, but it is one of them ones that I do expect Oxford to be mid-table at the end. I think it'll be a gritty, Rowett-based performance here. 1-0 to Oxford United. A bit of a shock. Coventry City versus Queen's Park Rangers. Coventry have started the season pretty impressively with a win and a draw, and they are up against a QPR side who's only picked up 1 point over two games, so one draw and one loss. Um, I think you would be a fool not to back Coventry in this one at home. Their fans are ferocious. 1-0 to Coventry. Norwich City versus Middlesbrough. Both of these teams potentially have aspirations of playoffs. Whether they do so or not remains to be seen. I mean, Middlesbrough have won their opening two games of the season, whereas Norwich have won one and lost one. So, we'll basically seeing is can Middlesbrough continue their great start to the campaign? I think it will be a bit of a exciting, probably ding dong do game, a 3-3 draw. Preston North End versus Ipswich Town. I think Ipswich have struggled a bit. They've only got two draws. I mean, a lot of people tipped them to do the season really well, but in terms of a lot of people who've tipped not to do well, it was Preston North End who have won one and drawn one in the opening two occasions. I'm going to go. Momentum helps a huge amount, and Preston at home as well at Deepdale. 3-2 to Preston North End. Sheffield United versus Millwall. Talking about teams who everybody expected to do well this season, Sheffield United, I've tipped to win the league. That may even already have to be revised, and they lost the opening two games. Not very good for the people in Sheffield at the moment, with both Sheffield United and Sheffield Wednesday in the relegation zone. Um, they are hosting Millwall, who have done well, we won one and lost one, but in terms of Millwall overall, we know the quality they do possess. They could definitely be a top half championship side come the end of the season. 1-0 to Millwall. Continuation of a poor performances by Sheffield United to continue. Southampton versus Stoke City. Stoke actually are doing bits this season so far. I've been really impressed by them and a bit surprised, in all honesty. I was not expecting Stoke to be a side for me that would probably be about mid-tables. I was not expecting them to start with the way they did. But they do have some quality players in there, and they are up against a Southampton team which are also decent and could definitely be challenging in the promotion pictures come the end of the season. This is going to be a really interesting one. I'm actually going to go with a 1-0 Stoke win, continuing that great winning momentum. West Bromwich Albion versus Portsmouth. Now, I did tip Portsmouth to do incredibly well, but you can't ignore the fact that West Brom have won their opening two games of the season. They've been quite impressive, in all honesty. We're up against a Portsmouth team which have been, won one and lost one, And this is not at Fratton Park, so we know Portsmouth tends to do better at home. 5-1 to West Brom, I think. Continually a five-star base performance by the Baggies. Wrexham versus Sheffield Wednesday. I think we might see Sheffield Wednesday win their first game here. Both of these teams have lost their opening two games of the season. But I think Wrexham have just not looked as much up for it as Sheffield Wednesday potentially have. I know Sheffield Wednesday have been actually relatively tight in some of the games they've been in so far. Um, and I'm going to go with a 3-0 Sheffield Wednesday win, uh, which will please you Wednesday fans out there, but probably not any Wrexham fans. Um, Luton Town versus Cardiff City. We're now on to League One. Two of the teams which were relegated from a championship last season. Both have started the season relatively well. We've got a much larger sample size. We've had 4 games so far for the League One and League Two teams. So, overall, both of these teams have started the season very well. They've had one game where they dropped points, so to speak, but overall have been pretty impressive. Um, so someone's great start's going to come to a bit of a shaky, and I think it'll be a close game. Kenilworth Road, though, can be an absolute cauldron at times. 1-0 to Luton Town. Rotherham United versus Wigan Athletic. Let's be honest, Rotherham have not been great. They won one and lost two of their opening 3 games. Um, one of 4 teams to have only played 3 games. I'm not entirely sure why that was the case. But they're up against a Wigan side that have won 2 and lost 2 in their opening 2. Um, Both of these teams are a bit inconsistent at present, but I do back the Wigan side to come and get away with all 3 points here. 1-0 to Wigan Athletic. AFC Wimbledon versus Barnsley. Although Wimbledon have been mid-table, they've been all right. 2 wins, 2 losses. They seem to be coping all right in this one. You got to credit Conor Hurahan's team of Barnsley, who are overperforming my expectations and have not lost a game yet. And I don't think they're going to win this one. 4-1 to Barnsley. On to Bolton Wanderers versus Lincoln City. Um, in this one, you've got the very inconsistent Bolton, who won one, lost one, and drawn one. And that's not in that is a random order, but 3 of their opening games, very inconsistent, very hard to necessarily place. Up against a Lincoln side who've won 3 out of their opening 4 games. I'm gonna have to back Lincoln. No, I think Bolton, they're a bit chaotic. We'll go with a 3-0 win for Bolton, but it could even be the other way. It's so hard to predict at times. Huddersfield Town versus Stevenage. Now, put your hands up if you actually genuinely thought that Stevenage were going to win all 4 of their opening fixtures. I don't think anyone did. I mean, they're not even being necessarily the easiest of fixtures either. Um, Okay, Port Vale and Northampton, probably easy enough to get past. But Rotherham and Blackpool, they're decent teams. Um, so to actually be faultless at the moment, really, is a real testament. They are up against a Huddersfield side which have only lost once in their opening 4 games and won the other 3. So it is a difficult task, certainly the hardest one they're going to have to face. And at home, I do think Huddersfield will beat that unbeaten start. 2-1 to the Terriers. Mansfield Town versus Leyton Orient. Um, Leyton Orient have only lost once since the start of the season. Mansfield have won 2, lost 2. Um, it's an interesting one coming into this. I think it might be quite an even game, more than some may anticipate based on last season's positions. I think we're going to go 3-2 to Leyton Orient, and I think it will be a bit of a competitive game altogether. Northampton Town versus Exeter City. Exeter are in a very inconsistent mood at the moment. Lost, win, lost, win. So the next one is, of course, going to be a loss. Even though they are up against a Northampton team who have only picked up 1 point out of the opening 4 games, and I think are destined for relegation this season. But I think they will win this one. 2-1 to Northampton Town. It is at home as well. And we know Exeter struggle away. Peterborough United versus Bradford City. Peterborough have been the worst teams since the start of the season, to be honest. They've lost all 4 of their opening games. I mean, it doesn't get any easier against a Bradford team who hasn't actually lost a game. I think their unbeaten record will continue, Bradford, but I think we will see the points split here. A 2-all draw at London Road. Plymouth Argyle versus Blackpool. Plymouth need to rejuvenate themselves, having lost their 4 opening games. They are very much in danger of back-to-back relegation as we speak. You're up against a Blackpool side, though, which has only won once since the start of the season. They've conceded the most amount of goals, if 11. It's got to. I think this has got to be Plymouth's opening game. They're at home, the opening win rather. They're at home, which tends to be where they're better at. 1-0 to Plymouth Argyle, starting the ball rolling, so to speak. Port Vale versus Doncaster Rovers, two of the sides that were promoted from League Two last season. Very interestingly, that none of the League Two sides which were promoted from last season are in the relegation zone, so to speak, and one of them is currently inhabiting the playoff zone. But neither of them are well. No, Port Vale is the one who's only picked up 2 points this season, but Doncaster have done all right. They've picked up 7 points out of our opening 4 games, and so for that reason, I'm going to have to back the Yorkshire-based side to win this one. 3-2 to Doncaster. Stockport County versus Burton Albion. Burton are currently in mid-table. They've been a bit inconsistent, but you don't mind that as a brewer. Some team which most people probably most seasons have tipped for relegation to have 4 points from the opening 3 games. It isn't too bad, relatively speaking. I now know why they have a game less because they played against Cranmere Rovers in the EFL Cup delayed game last night instead of against the game they should have been against Rotherham, I think it was. Anyway, they're up against a strong Stockport side, which have only lost once in their opening 4 games, have definitely got an eye for another playoff finish, if not stronger. We're going to have to back Stockport for this one. 2-1 to Stockport County. Wycombe Wanderers versus Reading. So somebody's going to have to break well, we don't necessarily, but as in, you'd think that maybe someone come away with all 3 points. I don't know. I can't tell. It's a bit of a derby, a local derby. This Berkshire versus Buckinghamshire. They tend to be relatively close to each other, but haven't had that many interactions. Um, but both of these at the moment are looking in very real danger of relegation. There's only 1 point split between the two of these two teams, and I think it'll be the points at the end of it. A 1-1 draw here at Adams Park. Newport County versus MK Dons. It's a really hard team to place your finger on at the moment, MK Dons, because they haven't actually lost a game. But some of the games they've looked really good in, some of them they've looked really abject, so to speak. And they're up against a Newport side which have been all over the place, really. A point, a win, and 2 losses. I'm gonna go with a bonker shout it. 6-3 to Newport County. Home advantage. I just think there will be a few shocks to the system along the line with MK this season. It won't be as plain sailing as many make out. Warsaw versus Salford City. Um, both of these teams probably have aspiration for playoffs, if not a bit higher. Warsaw have currently won 2, lost 2 of the opening 2 games. Salford, however, are a team. Oh, let's see where they are. Oh, who have won the opening 3 games. Well, won 3 out of their 4 opening games, rather. They're certainly a team which, at present, you would definitely say is a team that you'd back on paper to be able to be a playoff side. But I think it'll be even in this game. I think we're going to go with a 2-2 draw, relatively speaking. Accrington Stanley versus Grimsby Town. Well, we know Grimsby have had a fantastic start to the season. Is it sustainable? I'm not so sure. I think playoffs is definitely on the cards, but I don't think automatic promotion. And I think Accrington Stanley may get their first win of the season here at home. 3-2 to Accrington Stanley. Bristol Rovers versus Cambridge United. I actually was noticing in terms of out of the teams relegated from League One last season, 3 out of the bottom 4 of the current League Two season were all relegated from League One last season. So the momentum is clearly continuing onto this one. And admittedly, the other one who's in that bottom 4 bit is Cheltenham Town, who were a side who was only relegated from League One a couple of seasons ago. So yeah, very much the gap between League One and League Two very much non-existence almost at this point. And they are This is relevant because Bristol Rovers have only picked up 1 point since the start of the season. They're up against a Cambridge United side who have picked up 7-4. You got to back Cambridge to win this one. 2-0 to Cambridge United as Bristol Rovers struggle continues. Cheltenham Town versus Barnet. Barnet have finally found a win in their return to League Two. It only took them to the fourth game to do so, but they're up against a Cheltenham team which have lost the opening 4 games on the spin. You already have to begin questioning the manager for me at Cheltenham Town. You do not expect Cheltenham Town to be mired in a relegation scrap. You've got Michael Flynn, who, let's be honest, had a great um, history. Uh, in all honesty, he was with Cheltenham last season, and they were very mediocre. Yeah, I think they need to change manager potentially if they lose this one. I'm going to go with a 1-1 draw though. I think the split, um, I think it will be a bit of an even game altogether. But Cheltenham is certainly one of the ones I got question marks over. The other teams at the moment being the manager of Plymouth Argyle. I know it's early doors of Tom Cleverley. Just don't think Tom Cleverley is as good as many people make out. And Darren Ferguson, who I think I tipped at the start of the season to just needed a fresh person at the helm. Um, anyway, on to Colchester United versus Barrow. This one's interesting for some reasons because Colchester, I think, could make the playoffs this season. They've only lost one in their opening 4 games, but the other 2 of the 4 have been draws. They've been a fairly even game at the moment for most of the games they've been in. There's only one where they're really totally dominant, relatively speaking, um, and that was a a 2-0 win up against Shrewsbury. Um, they're up against a Barrow side who've only won one in their opening 4 and lost the other 3. I think we're going to see another even game here. We're going to go with a 0-0 draw at this one. The draw mongering continues for Colchester. Crawley Town versus Tranmere Rovers. They picked up a point in their last game. Could that be a turning point, so to speak, in their season, as they are currently rotting down towards the bottom end of the season without a single win to their name? It's a very difficult one to call, really. They are up against a Tranmere side who, let's just say, they are unbeaten in their opening 3 games in the league, but I don't think that will necessarily continue, in my opinion. And I think Crawley will win this one 3-2. I just can't see Crawley necessarily spending all season in a relegation scrap. Or maybe I could. Can't remember where I'll put them in the leagues. Um, Fleetwood Town versus Oldham Athletic. Um, yeah, interesting. Fleetwood have only lost once in their opening 4 games. They've won 2 and drawn the other one. Um, and plus the one they lost was against Crewe Alexandra, which have been faultless this season. So it's one of them ones that Fleetwood have actually had a very strong season, relatively speaking, so far. And they are up against an Oldham side who haven't actually won yet in League Two in their return, but they have had 3 draws. So I do think Fleetwood come and claim all 3 points in this one. 5-2 to Fleetwood Town. Gillingham versus Crewe Alexandra. Crewe, as we just alluded to, were absolutely faultless. They've won the opening 4 games. They've scored 10 goals already. Only conceded twice. Like, they are a side that is literally flying at the moment. And they're up against a Gillingham side which haven't actually lost. They've drawn 2 and won 2, and actually I think this could be a fairly even game altogether because Gillingham I think could be maybe a surprise package for many. A 0-0 draw at Priestfield for this one. Harrogate Town versus Chesterfield. Chesterfield felt a little bit of a buckle in the last game up against Gillingham, I believe it was. and I think they could do again here up against a Harrogate side, which have actually been unbeaten. I think it's a bit of a shock for me to see them unbeaten at the moment, and I think that unbeaten run will continue. They do say that as long as you don't lose games, it's a good momentum to have. 2-1 to Harrogate Town. Notts County versus Bromley. Bromley have also been unbeaten in the opening four games. They're up against a Notts County team which have only picked up 1 point in their opening three and lost the other two. Not been a great start for the Nottingham-based side. I'm going to go with a 1-1 draw here. I can feasibly see Bromley taking away something from this. Um, of course, it was a National League game not that long ago. Swindon Town versus Shrewsbury Town. Shrewsbury have had a rubbish start to the season. 1 point picked up in their opening three games. They're up against Swindon, who've had 2 wins and 2 losses in their opening four. I think Swindon could be a bit mid-table this season, but I do think Shrewsbury do get their first win on this one. 1-0 to Shrewsbury. On to the National League, and isn't it delightful where we're starting? Morecambe, what a roller coaster for the fans, eh? Thought they were going to be liquidated, thought they were absolutely dead and buried and gone. And then at the last hour, the Punjab what the Warriors or something like that consortium have taken over. They have got rid of Derek Adams, replaced him with a more youthful coach, the first seat coach in the top five tiers. We'll see how that works out. Um, I remained I remain open to the opportunity that it could work out, but I also think there's a possibility that it doesn't. So we'll see. But we're talking about this game here, and with no preseason, I do think this will be. I don't think it'll be a demolition job, so to speak. But Altrincham have started the season relatively speaking, a bit mid. They won one and lost two. I just think maybe a lack of match fitness for Morecambe will catch up with them. I think they'll be very defensive minded. I'm going to go with a 1-0 Altrincham win. I think there's going to need to be a bit of a heavy degree of training for Morecambe at the moment just to get into match fitness. Brackley Town versus Rochdale. Brackley are a team which have only played once and some of these teams have played 3 times. It's all a bit crazy. Um, but the one game that they were in, they did win. Um, but they are up against a Rochdale team which have won the opening two games. I think they could be a very strong team this season if they put their minds to it. Um, I think this will be all honours even here. 0-0 draw. Is this St James's Park where Brackley Town play as well? I have a feeling it is. Um, I'm going to check that because, yeah, it is. It is St James's Park. There you go. My niche knowledge of non-league coming out yet again. Braintree Town versus Yeovil Town at Cressing Road. Um, I think I think both of these teams have had. I think Braintree had a good start and then they lost the second game, and I think we're roughly going to see Braintree probably mid-table come the end of the season. And the same could probably said for Yeovil. I'm not going to base too much on the opening two games as a sample size. I'm going to go 1-0 to Yeovil. I think they're just marginally the better team on their day. And I think it'll be a very even game. It could definitely go either way. Eastleigh versus Boston United. Um, yeah, I was actually very much impressed with Boston on the opening game. It did lose the following game, but it's relatively been a good start compared to Eastleigh, which have lost the opening two, have looked pretty poor at parts. We're going to have to go here a 1-1 draw. The first point for Eastleigh, and Boston to be a bit erratic and irregular, as you sort of expect now. Gateshead versus Tamworth. Both these teams are relatively even, I think, at the moment in terms of quality. I think we could see a really strong Tamworth team this season once they get into gear. And Gateshead possibly not make the playoffs this season. So I'm going to go 2-0 to Tamworth here. Um, a very interesting non-league team, Tamworth. Who've been sort of all over the non-league pyramid. throughout their years. FC Halifax Town versus Forest Green Rovers. Now, who generally expected Halifax to have only had one win in their opening three and lost the other two? Certainly not me. I thought they were going to be a very strong team this season. But maybe they're just beginning to warm up into action. And they are up against a Forest Green team, though, who would definitely be having an eye on the title. Haven't lost any of the opening two games they've been in. I think Halifax, though, may provide the first blow to that. Halifax to win this one, 2-1. Hartlepool United versus Woking. Hartlepool have not been beaten in their opening three games, winning two and drawing the other. They're up against a Woking side who have lost all three of their opening games. You would have to say that it would be fairly obvious to back Hartlepool to win this one, but I'm actually going to go with a 1-1 draw at the Suits Direct Stadium. I just think it's one of them ones that Woking maybe they'll get relegated this season, but I actually think they'll be more likely to be mid-table like they usually are. Solihull Moors versus Aldershot Town. Um, Solihull are in 12th. They've had three draws at present. The table doesn't matter as much, but three draws in a row. A very even game in terms of all the ones they've been in. They're up against an Aldershot team who have lost the opening two. I think could potentially struggle this season. I think another loss for Aldershot is likely here. 2-1 to Solihull Moors as they register their first win of the season. Sutton United versus Scunthorpe United. Now, a lot of people are raving about Scunthorpe. They did open their two opening games did end up with a win for the Iron. They're against Sutton who've drawn their opening two games. So I think this could be an interesting one. Could we see Scunthorpe coming a bit undone here? I think we might do. 4-1 to Sutton United, which will come as a bit of a shock, maybe. But I just think Scunthorpe won't get back-to-back promotions. I just don't see it happening, to be honest. I think this will be a more transitional season for Scunny than I think a lot of people are giving credit to. Um, On to Truro City versus Southend United. Now, Truro have so far struggled in the National League. They've lost the opening three games, haven't scored a goal yet, have conceded 6 goals. It's one of them ones that it isn't looking like that glory road to of glory that Wrexham had, which they were recently claiming, I think the owners, that they were trying to replicate. So I think in terms of that, um, maybe peaking too soon, so to speak. But they are at home up against the Southend team, though, who have been opening the two opening games they won. They scored 5 goals this season. I think it could be a 0-0 draw, though. I just genuinely think if Truro get their act together at home, they could be able to stay up. But I think it will be a bit of a long season. Wealdstone versus Carlisle. This is an interesting one. So Wealdstone have won all three of their opening games. Carlisle haven't actually lost any of their opening three games, but 2 draws in there. I think it will be the first draw for Wealdstone and the third draw for Carlisle. 0-0 here. I've just got to think that the goodness within both of the clubs it is that neither will want to beat their unbroken record at the moment in this season. Wealdstone is a bit of a surprise package, all things speaking. AFC Telford United versus Buxton. Um, this is a interesting one because Buxton started the season really well and then we lost the last 2 games. So they're up against a Telford team who haven't actually won yet. So I think it will be a bit of a more even game here. I'm going with a 1-1 draw at New Bucks Head. Both teams nickname the Bucks, aren't they, actually? Um, on to Curzon Ashton versus Merthyr Town. 3 draws for all of the opening games of Curzon Ashton. Up against a Merthyr Town team which have won 2 and lost 1. They've certainly started a very like they mean to go on, how they started ended last season. 0-0 draw I'm going with here on the basis that Curzon Ashton have drawn a lot, and I think they'll continue to do so. AFC Fylde versus Kidderminster Harriers. Um, Both of these teams, I think, come the end of the day, will probably be within the title competition. Fylde have had 2 wins, 1 loss. Kidderminster have had 1 win, 2 draws, but they're the unbeaten side. I think they're relatively even at the moment, all things considering. I'm going to go with a 2-all draw, a very exciting game to watch. Hereford versus Chorley. Chorley haven't actually lost a game yet, but this could be the first one because maybe they're coming in with their expectations because Hereford have only won one out of their last three, but it was their last game, and I think we may begin to see Hereford slowly steering themselves in the right direction. 1-0 at Hereford, they're at home as well, which is always a important attribute. Kings Lynn Town versus Darlington. Darlington in 14th mid-table. Kings Lynn, however, in second. They've had a faultless start. Well, they did have a draw in one of them, but 2 wins in the other ones. Winning does breed a bit of winning, so you've got to back the Linnets for this one. 2-1 to Kings Lynn Town. Leamington versus Radcliffe. Both of these teams may end up with bit of a relegation scrap on their hands at the moment. 2 points is all that Leamington have from their opening 3 games, whereas Radcliffe have had 1 win and 2 losses. I think both of these teams are relatively even altogether. We're going to go with a 0-0 draw in this game. Macclesfield versus Alfreton Town. Alfreton have been appalling. They've only picked up 1 draw and 2 losses in opening 3 games. Not the side that I was expecting. They're up against a strong Macclesfield team in this one who've won 2 and lost 1 in their opening 3 games. Macclesfield will be strong here and they will win this one, I think, 3-2 to Macclesfield. They're at home as well, so you've got to back Macclesfield to win this one. Marine versus Bedford Town. Marine been a bit of a surprise package so far. They've won 2 out of their opening 3 games, which I was a bit surprised about. But they're up against a Bedford Town team, which are newly promoted. It's going to be difficult for them in terms of some of the distance, but they've had 4 points in their opening 3 games, so far they've shown themselves to be able to adjust to this level. We're going with a 0-0 draw. I just think both of these teams are relatively even altogether come the end of the season. They may roughly inhabit a similar area of the table.